Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. It's Monday afternoon. I am delighted this afternoon to be joined by Acsom Rabbani. There is loads to talk about, loads of positivity as well to cover. And the first thing I'm going to have to say is what a top that is, by the way. You've got some collection, Acsom.
I've got a collection of about 3 or 4 of these now, and every time I wear it, it always gets commented on. This is probably my favourite of them all. But it's cheers for noticing.
No, it's a cracker. Can I just say, before we get stuck right into the performance yesterday, which, there is loads to unpack. See, when you're kicking about in public, do you ever get any kind of negative comments in
No,
relation to that?
never at all yet, and it's always been the opposite. The amount of times people stop me, I've got a couple of hoodies as well, and they ask, "Oh, where'd you get that from?" or "Loving the top and support everything you do." So no, never any negativity at all. Usually that's all online, isn't it? Nobody really has it in them to
Yeah,
say it in person.
I've had a wee bit over the years, Asim, just a wee
Just a
tad,
bit.
just a tad. You learn to live with it. You try to engage as much as you possibly can. Some people are beyond engagement, and most of them are from the other side of this divide
Yeah.
that we have in Glasgow. However, let's not talk about all that. Let's talk about the big game and going into it. I think all week after the highs of a Champions League win, not just the Champions League win, but the winning of a meaningful game in the Champions League. We were talking last week, and it was like the next time we talk, we're going to have Champions League football under our belt. We're going to have the game at Falkirk, which, by the
Aye.
way, we were not taken lightly because they've been
No.
on great form. So we could probably backtrack a wee bit. Let's talk about the Champions League night. Looked like you had a good one yourself.
Oh, what a night! From start to finish, I thought we went into it with an air of confidence, obviously just because of the form and the opposition. But at the same time, we spoke about it before, Paul John. We hadn't earned the right to take any opponents lightly. Obviously, we were fully aware that it was a game that we were favourites in. We were in a good place, but for us to then go and put that all into practice, we played teams similar to Slovan, if not worse, in Champions League qualifiers or in the Europa League before, and came away and not got the 3 points or not played well. So, people can talk about the opposition all they want. The fact is that we made sure in the first half that we controlled the game and we played our best football.
We may have a little bit of interference there, and Asim has left me to it. There you go. I wasn't sure if it was me or the big fella, but he'll be back. He'll be back once the Wi-Fi kicks back in. Obviously, the Fife Wi-Fi has been getting a hard time here on the comment section, but there's so much to talk about. I can divert that conversation over to the comments section, and it gives you an opportunity to make your feelings known in relation to the week in Celtic. We obviously looked ahead to the first Champions League game. There was quite a lot to look forward to. The big fellas coming back in. And obviously, on the back of the win, we were all on something of a high. Sorry, Asim, when you disappeared, mate, I wasn't sure if it
Sorry.
was the old Fife potato Wi-Fi or if it
No, I
was
think it was
yourself.
something from my end, possibly. Apologies about that. I
No
was right in
problem.
the flow well, just talking
I
about
know.
obviously how fantastic Wednesday was. But it was just to say, yeah, I think the performance itself, honestly, it's we've been talking about Champions League nights for years, and but that was up there for me in terms of atmosphere as well. And I think it just obviously the crowd responded to the team and vice versa. The second half was scintillating. I thought we were good enough in the first half as well. Should have been more ahead. But as soon as we came out in the second half, within minutes, Nicholas Kühn, and then from then on in, it was a case of how many. And I was so delighted to see that we were actually able to put our dominance into the scoreline as well, because I think if we'd finished that game maybe 3-1, you would have felt we've let them off lightly.
Yeah.
I think 5-1 was a fair reflection, and we just look like a team that's high in confidence right now. And for all that, we all made our kind of predictions before the game. I don't think many of us would have predicted 5-1 and a performance like that. So brilliant to see, and it just gives us a lot of confidence going into what is now obviously a couple of tough away games in the group.
Yeah, without a doubt. And it was very interesting that we managed to get a voice on Belgian football for when we're going to be facing Bruges. We hopefully will have someone to speak to in relation to the Atalanta game as well. It's always good to get a fan's perspective going into these games. They'll the version of a Celtic state of mind in Italy for Atalanta, whatever it may be called. So we're making efforts to try and get someone in to give us the lowdown on that particular fixture as well. But before we get to all that, of course, you mentioned Kühn. He was a player that obviously coming in January alongside Adam Ida. It looked to me as though we had signed a player who, had the problems, people going about teething problems, but quite literally he had teething problems coming to Celtic. And I made a bold prediction. By the way, we get plenty of predictions wrong, but I made a bold prediction in the summer months there that he was going to be one of our top performers. I wanted to see him on the biggest stage, Acsom. I wanted to see Adam Ida on the biggest stage as well. They both passed the test, didn't they?
Yeah, I remember you making that call, Paul John, so milk it, because you called it early.
I've got to milk it. There's various other ones. I'm glad, all I'm saying is, when Mo Bangura signed for Celtic, I'm glad in a way that Acsom wasn't online, because I was very excited about Mo Bangura. So there you go.
Here's one for you. I remember a couple of seasons ago when I was on 67 Hail Hail, and there was a couple of pre-season games we covered, and Bernabe was shining, and I made the call that season. I was like, he's going to be one of our star players. So we've all got them wrong. So you've got to milk it when you call one right. And by early indications, Nicholas Kühn, wow, he's in contention for. If he carries this on, he's in contention for players. He's in very early days, but his numbers, his influence in big games, big moments. We've seen it midweek, even just straight away in the second half. Got the assist for Kyogo. He just looks so strong on the ball, off the ball. Yesterday as well for Ida's second goal. He's just an exciting player to watch. Someone that kind of gets you off the edge of your seat, which we didn't have at all last season. Mm-hmm. And we didn't really see from him. Now, as you mentioned, his teething problems, but I don't think we probably all fully appreciated just how much that must have impacted him, because he looks like a completely different player. And this is now from pre-season against Man City, and we're now, a couple of months into the season, and he's still carrying on that form. The only thing I used to kind of maybe criticise was he didn't get the shot off enough. Well, he showed that in the last few games as well, and 2 brilliant goals yesterday, 2 brilliant assists. To get man of the match, after 30 minutes of playing, just tells you everything you need to know. And he's one that, I think will only get better. And I think that's the exciting thing about this current Celtic team. You can see 3 or 4 of them only improve under Brendan Rodgers further.
The big thing for me, and I think back to every conversation I'm lucky to have with ex-Celtic players, and one thing that always stuck in my mind, when I wrote the Quality Street Gang, the first interview I did with one of the Quality Street kids was with none other than Daniel Fergus McGrain. So you can imagine how nervous I was going up to Lennoxtown. First time I'd ever been up there, and sitting down with a legend that is Danny McGrain. And he said something that stuck with me, and it was in and around, this big thing about man management. People think, well, Jock Stein must have been like one of the greatest man managers, which he undoubtedly was, but it was the methods, Acsom, that I find really interesting, because all these different man managers have different methods. Even Ange versus Brendan, we've heard recently how James Maddison spoke about being managed by both managers and how they get the best out of their individuals. And one thing Danny McGrain said was that Jock Stein would tell you once, that was it. And if you didn't pick up on it, he wouldn't waste his time. He wouldn't waste his time. And it was almost as if, and sometimes he would use people as an example, and he would show maybe some of the younger kids coming through, if you don't do what you're told, this is what's going to happen. You will end up on loan at Clyde, for example, because he did that to some players. Ruthless, yeah. I don't know if Brendan Rodgers is like that. I think the difference that Maddison was talking about, having been managed by Brendan Rodgers versus Ange Postecoglou, and of course there was Matt O'Reilly touched on it. Matt O'Reilly
hinted on that as well.
Was more of a, I don't know, ruthless. Yeah, definitely. He's been ruthless with Haksabanovic, for example. He's been fairly ruthless with the aforementioned Bernabe. But at the same time, I think he is one of the guys that can put the arm on the shoulder. Whereas from what I've heard or read, I don't think Ange was big on that.
No, you're right. I've seen the Maddison interview, and if as you alluded to, Matt O'Reilly kind of said that Brendan Rodgers seems much more of a man manager in that sense, a more of a people's person. I had the pleasure of actually bumping into him last week.
What was the story there, by the way? You and the wee man.
Aye. So as a few viewers might know, I sometimes work away from home, and I've been on the podcast where it's quite a noisy background. So I was there again on Thursday, so it was the day after the Champions League game. And I see Brendan Rodgers walking into the place, and he was I don't know what he was doing. So about 10 minutes later, I see him walk out, and I was like, right, I've got to go up to him. So he walked out the premises, and then I just kind of went out, and I was like, Brendan, and he turned around and straight away just came over. I don't know if he maybe recognised me from previous press conferences or just his mannerisms. He was so warm and right down for a chat. So we just spoke openly for a good 5 minutes about the game the night before, the squad, how happy he is with the squad. It didn't feel like you just kind of bumped into him in the street. He was down for a chat, and it was me that kind of said to him, like, I'll let you go, because I felt like I was taking up his time. But I spoke to Jerry Taylor about it after as well, because Jerry messaged me. He goes, "Oh, you're his favourite now." But I think I was quite taken aback at just how warm and open he was to having a chat in the middle of the street and just like talking about proper football and stuff, rather than just kind of a quick picture and off you go. So he seems, and by all accounts, anyone that's met him before, yourself, Jerry, they all say he's really good with that. He's got time for everyone. He's got time to speak. And I guess that's probably reflected in his management style. You see it in the training clips, over hugging everyone, individually. He's the opposite of standoffish. He likes to, maybe have a chat with all players individually. So yeah, everyone's got different styles. Ange's style was effective in what he wanted. He kind of left the players to it. He always said that's their domain. And Brendan's obviously opposite, and both have been successful in their ways. But it just seems like there are certain players that kind of style works with more, an arm around the shoulder. And that's what Rodgers seems to be doing and getting the best out of some of these guys.
Absolutely. And the big thing for me as well is you constantly look at the Brendan Rodgers Mark 1 versus where he is now. And I go back to the comments that Joe Hart made the other night there in relation to when he actually made his mark at Celtic. It was almost as if he was quite willing to allow the Ange machine to continue to roll until such times as the wheels were kind of coming off it, and then he had to step in and do his thing. But what I find really interesting about Brendan Rodgers is the fact that he can take a player who's maybe a wee bit broken, and I think Kühn is one of the guys, 24-year-old, who has had 3 opportunities, maybe at 3 big clubs, Acsom, to kick on, and it's not happened for him. And he's ended up making loads of appearances for their B teams and not breaking into the first team of, let's say, Ajax, Bayern Munich, Leipzig. And then he's gone away and he's made a name for himself at Rapid Vienna. But he still needs something to put him onto that level. And sometimes that something is the manager that's able to work with him and push him to the next level. There's an argument to say that Rodgers played a big part in O'Reilly's transformation last season as well.
Yeah, and if you remember in Rodgers' first spell, kind of Sinclair was that kind of guy, wasn't he? He was struggling at was it Villa we signed Sinclair from?
That's right. Yeah,
and he wasn't a regular contributor for them. He had obviously had a great career, but at that point wasn't really firing all cylinders. Rodgers brought him in, and you've seen how important he was for us there. And it just seems like Kühn could be that guy for this Celtic team. With the assists and goals he's getting, and Rodgers has earmarked Engels as a guy he wants to become a goal-scoring midfielder, and I've got no doubts. He's already got 2. I know that they were penalties, but you see he's getting a lot of shots on goal, so you can just see he's going to tweak that in him. And likewise, he called it for Matt O'Reilly, start of last season. He said that's the one area of the game where he could improve, and lo and behold, he gets really great numbers that season as well. So Rodgers, that's one of his strengths, and it's something I actually said to him when I met him. When we were talking about Arne Engels, and you could see the glow in his eyes just talking about him, saying, when I first came in, I said the kind of player I want was about someone with physicality, athleticism, dynamism, and he goes, this is it, this is the kind of guy that we wanted. And I said, well, if anyone can even improve his game further, that's kind of his strength, and that's what I think we're going to see. And it's great to watch the development of this Celtic team at the moment. We're at the stage where I'm looking forward to the next game straight away. I'm almost gutted we've not got a midweek game, because you're buzzing to see these players again. And as much as obviously we'll talk about yesterday was a bit of a mixed game in terms of how it went, but you're just excited every time you're watching the Celtic team at the moment.
Yeah, and another thing that I really enjoyed, Acsom, was the fact that you can see the progression of the manager. Like, I'll know because of my age that you do absolutely mellow with age, Acsom. You've got all this to come, mate. And hopefully learn from various mistakes that you might make, be that in work, life, whatever. And you look at Brendan Rodgers and you think to yourself, you know, the Brendan Rodgers of old, who it was almost as if the shutters came down at a certain point, first time round, and we were all worried, terminado, and we know what came to pass. This time round, I see a completely different Brendan, if you like. And after the game, for example, he takes the blame. He takes the blame for what happened yesterday. Now, the big chat, obviously, going into the game, in the comments in the pre-match was all around, people were worried that we were making too many changes. I think it can have a disjointed kind of look if you throw in half a dozen new players. But the big issue for me was at the back, because it was a brand new defence, if you like, 4 guys who hadn't started as a defensive unit before. The point was made in the comments section, these guys are training every day. At some point, and this was made by Brendan, you've got to play them. Valle has got to play at some point. Trusty has got to start a game at some point. And then, of course, you've got Welsh and Ralston, who are very important squad players, but they need game time. I mean, Welsh went through a period or 2 seasons there, last 2 seasons, where he played 20 games of football. As a 24-year-old, that's not enough. So when you get the opportunity, you've got to play them. And you get the opportunity at times after a European game where Rodgers has admitted Carter Vickers and Johnson have got niggles. So you've got opportunities to make the changes there. We'll run through all the performances. Not going to be too hard on anybody. It's all about kind of bleeding them in. But let's start with Valle, right? So Greg Taylor, up there with Liam Scales, is probably the most derided Celtic player over the last couple of seasons. We really missed him. We missed the influence of Greg Taylor. And when he came on, he won't get the plaudits because it's so obvious that Kühn made a difference. It's pretty obvious that even Yang made a difference. But Taylor coming in just gives you, for me, he galvanises the team. He's one of the guys who you look at as an experienced player who's part of the heartbeat of this football side. And I think when you take him out of the team, you notice that you actually miss him, Acsom.
Anyone that knows football would have realised yesterday that Taylor was a big factor in the change in urgency. You're right. Kühn will get the headlines. Yang was good. Ida, obviously, with his goals. But as soon as Taylor came on, you just felt you've got an extra leader on the pitch as well. And I've said this before, and people may have disagreed, but I think he is. He's one of the leaders in that group. I think anyone, again, that's watched the documentary will see the influence and character that Greg Taylor is and how important he is around the dressing room. And I think as soon as he comes on the pitch, he's shouting instructions. I know we laugh sometimes that he can be a bit of a moaner. Again, I don't mind it. Sometimes you always say, we always kind of say that he has to look at himself first as well. But I think he's that kind of character. He's set himself a high bar over the last couple of seasons, and he has the same with his teammates. And as soon as he came on, I just noticed a shift in urgency and tempo, and I think he's part of that as well. Look, I was one of the ones that pre-game thought it was the right thing to do to make that many changes, because I thought, as you said, if ever there's a time to do it, we've all been saying that we've not had a chance to see Trusty, Valle, the likes of Palma, maybe less so. Obviously, we've seen him a few times now. We know what he can do. Same with Welsh, but I thought definitely for the two in the back line, and then obviously with Johnston and CCV being injury doubts, made sense. 8 changes is a lot, but I thought the squad looks good, strong enough, and it's the perfect time to rotate. And I thought we'd still be fine. And Rodgers probably obviously thought the same, but in hindsight, making that many changes all at once is probably what makes it so disjointed. I think if you bring Valle in and then you kept the normal back 3 of CCV, Johnston, and Scales, he wouldn't look out of place and he'd probably slot in seamlessly. I think when you add him to Trusty, who haven't played together, Palma in front of him, who's not featured, that's when you see the things are a bit more disjointed. So I think it's a bit, not unfair, that's not the right word. I think it's important for these guys to get minutes, to see the standard, to see the demands. But I think naturally their performance, I think we'll be able to judge better when they're coming in as like a sole change in that line of maybe a defence or a midfield. But when it's amongst 8 changes, I think it's only natural that, as the manager alluded to, we're going to see a bit of disjointedness. But I've got no worries about them. I think it's going to take them time to bed into the speed and style of play. But I just thought yesterday was kind of a natural expectation of what might happen when you make 8 changes.
Yeah, I'm going to bring in some of the comments, Acsom. But you're right, you've got to test that kind of second tier. We're in a situation where we could go into a Champions League game. Greg Taylor could be injured. And, then it's like, right, Vaille's your option there. Same at the centre-back area. Nawrocki came on for a wee cameo yesterday. He's still in the building. It's like, you've got to try and keep these guys ready.
And if you've got Dies and Maeda in front of you, it's going to completely change your performance in the game as well. I think that's we can't not shy away from that. I think Maeda makes such a difference for the fullback that he's playing behind. And I thought there was positives in his performance. Obviously for the 2 goals. The first one I think was a free kick on him, and there was a few times where he got out muscled, and the right winger for Falkirk I thought was pretty good. But there was some nice touches in there. Obviously did well for our first goal with the knockback. Seemed to really enjoy that in the celebration. So I think there's stuff there to be encouraged about. But I just think, we'll be able to judge these guys more, as you say, when they're maybe coming in when there's an injury for Greg Taylor or something like that. So I wouldn't be too concerned about the fact that there was a few guys in the first team yesterday that weren't fully up to speed.
No, that's 100%. There's some comments coming in relation to that goal where he seemed to be out muscled by Alfie Agyeman, who was something of an unknown quantity going into the game, but he caused a few problems. And we were talking about it, Sean, myself and Kevin. Where did they pluck this guy from? Turns out it was Celtic Hearts.
Celtic Hearts, yeah.
Celtic Hearts, yes. So I thought he had a cracking game, and he caused a lot of problems, but it was more of a physical issue, I felt. Alex Valle, that going back to what we opened up with today, I seen Brendan Rodgers will simply look at that and say, right, we need to work on this guy's upper body strength, which can make a huge difference in that scenario. He won't be out muscled. By the way, looking at that first one, it did look as though he was impeded, kind of dragged back into the box, Alex Valle, and then the ball broke.
I was going to say, stylistically, he seems similar to Taylor, doesn't he? Like, he seems like someone who's going to be a good passer of the ball, good touch, good link-up play. He doesn't seem like someone who's going to beat a man. So I think, obviously, that was the aim of getting him in, someone that similar to Taylor, so that when one slots in, it's going to be seamless because of the stylistic way we play. So I think that was encouraging. I know maybe we spoke about the start of the season, maybe wanted a different style of left-back, but it doesn't make sense if we're not going to play a different style. Obviously, we'll adapt, accordingly per opposition or per, competition we're in or whatnot. But I think generally we're going to play this style of controlled possession, link-up play, overloads, and I think he seems like he's got the raw attributes for that. But as you say, something maybe like physical strength is something he could probably work on.
Yeah, and again, it's one of the things that no matter what age you are as a footballer, you can improve on that. Jungle Lion comes in. Rodgers playing mind games with best team we've played. I did pick up on that. It was tremendous after the game.
It was kind of all the right people.
Well, this is the thing. From time to time, you can say something and you know it's going to land, right? But I think it was twofold. There was obviously winding up all the right people, but I also think that he's got a huge respect for his Falkirk counterpart, John McGlynn. They've worked together, and it was really, you hear the stories about Brendan Rodgers going into the dressing room after a game and all the rest of it. And some people might think, on the one hand, Asim, what an ego you must have to think that, well, people do appreciate that kind of thing. And I remember speaking to someone who was involved in the very, very early rounds of the Scottish Cup. And, right down the leagues, if you like, 7th, 8th tier of Scottish football, they managed to get a draw with Brechin City, right? And at that time, Craig Levine, I don't know what his role was, but he was involved, probably director of football or something, right? Prior to the St Johnstone job. And they won 1-0. Brechin beat them 1-0. It was just like really tight.
Yeah.
And what the manager says to me when I spoke to him was, to him, Craig Levine's an ex-Scotland manager. And all it would have taken would have been to pop his head in the door and say, well done, guys, or have a wee chat in the manager's ear, ask him, just to say, you're doing really well, you really ran us tight. And it would have meant the world to him. Yeah. And I think when Brendan does that, and he goes into the dressing room at Falkirk, everybody lifts. I'll give everybody a lift. So that was just a touch of class for me.
Did he do similar last year against Bucky Thistle?
Yeah. And I remember in his first tenure, being at the game where Odsonne Edouard made his debut. You'll remember it was midweek. It was at Hamilton. Hamilton. And he did exactly the same there. He's gone into the dressing room afterwards. And I think, it's tradition, isn't it? Back in the day, they would have all shared the half. But now it's cups of tea, obviously. But yes, he did that. And it's just, for me, it's just a
small
classy
touches.
touch.
Yeah, it's just good. It's gestures that people will remember, and it's probably why him and John McGlynn have got such a good relationship, because from the first time round, it would have been small things like that people remember, and it's priceless, that kind of stuff. Like you say, it's just giving these people your time, and giving them a lift. It's a measure of the guy. But to talk about Falkirk, I think great credit to them. I thought they were a breath of fresh air. A lot of teams could take a leaf out of their books in terms of how they approached that. And people might say, "Oh, look at the end result," but that was just we upped our quality when we needed to, but we had to work hard for that. And he was not lying when he said that's as tough a game as we've had all season. It really was, and it wasn't because of a team, sitting everyone behind the ball and being really hard to break down. They were decent defensively, but they had a go at us. They got the ball down. Their fans were in great voice as well. I thought it was a great occasion, great cup tie, but a lot of credit for Falkirk, because I really enjoyed watching them play as well. And there's a lot of teams that you see come to Celtic Park. Look at Hearts, a couple of weeks prior, with a squad that should be doing a far better. Yet barely tried to string 3 passes together until the final 5-10 minutes. They could be watching John McGlynn's team and learning a thing or two.
Big pressure for Hearts. Big pressure.
Big pressure.
The thing with Falkirk, growing up, Acsom, and I guess your point of reference often is being introduced to football, going for the first few seasons and all that kind of stuff. Falkirk were always in and about the top league for me. Growing up, Falkirk were always in there. Dundee United were always in there. Dunfermline. So I look at these clubs and think that the infrastructure and all the rest of it are often that of a Premiership club. And I think that Falkirk, the wheels came off the Falkirk bus a long time ago, and they ended up in the 3rd tier for a spell.
Yeah.
They're not a 3rd tier football club. And I know they no longer play at Brockville, and they play in a community stadium, and they've done away with their academy, which was producing. It really was producing, and every so often they were selling players down south for 200-300 grand, etc. But sometimes it just takes somebody to steady the ship, and that's what McGlynn's done, and he's done brilliantly. So fair play to them. And as you say, they came out and they actually made a game of it. It was a very entertaining game. And I implore any Celtic fan to say when we went 3-2 up that they weren't gone daft at the prospect of actually turning it round, because I know I was.
Oh, that's the thing. You could feel that, and it's rare for a League Cup game at Celtic Park against lower league opposition for the atmosphere to be like that. And again, that's obviously credit to Falkirk. They made a right game of it. Everyone was fully invested, and that 3rd goal was celebrated just as much as some of the goals in midweek. So brilliant. I thought it was a great game, and 100%. I think delighted if Falkirk can get up to the top flight, because I think they'd be a real good addition to the league, just based on what I've seen, and they seem to be flying in the championship. So hopefully that continues.
And there's another thing that I find quite amusing. The upsurge of ultras. And then looking back to when I was a wee bit younger, where completely differentiating, although the authorities can't differentiate between ultras and casuals. But back in the day, obviously, all the old casual groups and all the rest of it, the Falkirk ultras, right? Get this, they're called Falkirk Fear. They're called Falkirk Fear, and I'm just like, oh, get them in the Premier League. That's top tier. David Boyle, great to see the new players, but work to be done. Kühn was immense, absolutely, David. And Yang skips ahead of Palma for me. Right, I do want to talk about that. I really do. I want to talk about Palma and Yang without, being too hard on anyone. But before I do it, I see some tremendous news this morning through Acsom. We got an email to say that we have been nominated. We are finalists for 2 national awards. Now, I don't take that lightly. I really don't, because I think that, basically with national awards, there's no skin in the game. They're looking at media companies all over the country and further afield internationally as well. And they are looking at the content. They're not going to have it, the blue tinted or the green tinted specs. And they have decided that Acsom are up for best podcast and best influencer. Now, I've actually put the link underneath the video, because what happens is it goes to a vote. 50% of the votes come from the audience, 50% goes to a judging panel. And then the winners are announced in November. It's down at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Hopefully we will be well represented down there, Acsom. And we've got a good relationship with the awards, because we've been down there a few times. this moment in time. You can't really see them because they're glass, but along this shelf, we've got six national awards in there. We've been finalists 8 times. We've now been finalists 10 times. Hopefully we can add to the awards. But I think it really is down to all the hard work and contribution from the team that we have behind the scenes, Asim, because obviously we do the live stream, we do the weekly fully produced show that goes out on a Friday night, we do the live events, we do the charity work, we've released singles into the music charts. Obviously we chatted above Mariah Carey, always got to put that in there. But it's tremendous, and I'm delighted. I'm really proud, and I've got to thank everybody and whoever it was that nominated, because it was a nomination process, and I'm sure that some of the people listening today went through that process. So thank you, everybody, for continuing to support a Celtic state of mind.
Yeah, and look, I know you've mentioned it's a team effort, and of course it is. There's a lot of us involved in the kind of daily bulletins, but the amount of effort yourself put in behind the scenes, you're on it every day with This Is Acsom and then the events, everything. So I've seen it firsthand how much time and effort you put into it. So I've got to say huge congratulations to yourself. It's not, like you said, it's a UK wide thing. So to get this amount of nominations year in, year out says a lot. So big congratulations to yourself, and the rest of the team. It's a great team to be a part of. Thoroughly enjoy it. As you say, we're here every day. Anyone that's watching This Is Acsom, the episodes have been brilliant as well. So there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes, a lot more to come. So a big thank you to obviously everyone in the comments and all the viewers that tune in every day as well. It's a full team effort. Even just yesterday, walking to the stadium, without fail, every week people come up and be like, "Love the show, tune in all the time." So it's I've never had anyone say anything negative. So yeah, well into yourself and to all the rest of the team.
It's great, and it really is. You're representing the Celtic fan media space as well, though, Asim, because you and I both know quite a lot of the guys involved on other platforms and other channels, and there's some brilliant content out there. It's not every football club that's got that. This is the thing. Maybe we take it for granted because the standard. I'm going to give Tino a shout out because the standard of the stuff Tino does on the Celtic Exchange, for example, is sensational. It's brilliant. And then some of the other charity work that's been done within the Celtic fan media platforms.
You look at the Weekender that you did, getting all the different fan medias together. It just shows you as well. There's everyone can work together, and I think that's the beauty of it. There's something out there for everyone. Not every podcast is going to be everyone's cup of tea, but within the range that there is. And you mentioned Tino there. I've been involved with Tino quite a few times as well. An absolutely great guy, and the stuff he did, like you said, the Battle to Save Celts series is sensational. I've worked with Hamish as well before, and he's another great one. So there's plenty out there, and as you say, it just drives the standards up. So I think it's a huge testament to everyone involved that we're up for nominations again.
Love it, absolutely love it, and we'll go down. Don't know if we'll see Ange when we're doing it at the Spurs Stadium, but I'll keep an eye out for him. But thanks, everybody. As I say, I'm going to share the link underneath the video going into the vote, which will probably take about a month or so. And we'll see where we are come November. So thanks, everybody, for supporting us. Barry O'Sullivan, Kühn, that looks a totally different player this year. He looks class. You know what I like about him, right? He's kind of got that Leon look about him, insofar as he's got that emotionless vibe about him. He scores a goal and he just it's like, of course I've scored a goal. I've been practicing. You know what I mean? He's just like ice cold.
Ice cold, yeah.
He is, isn't he?
Because obviously you compare it to our kind of last winger that was as exciting as kind of, obviously Jota was sensational for us, and everyone just loved him because of all the kind of everything that came with him. Kühn's a kind of opposite kind of personality, it seems. Obviously, we just from the outside looking in. Very exciting on the ball, scores goals, but he's very different in terms of his demeanor. Like you said, it's almost like I'm expected to that. Even yesterday, just a celebration, very cool. But he's just a joy to watch right now, and I think the work he puts in off the ball as well. I think that's something that's maybe underrated, because I've seen that quite a lot this season. He really bullies fullbacks off the ball. You've seen it what he did yesterday for Ida's second. And you can see that kind of upper body strength, which is, they said he lost about 10 kg during his teething problems. You can see that. You can see why that impacted his game so much, because it's that kind of raw strength and power, which is what's making him so good right now. And I don't know what age is he. I'm thinking mid-20s.
24.
24. What a great
24.
age.
I know.
That's the thing about it. You look at our squad right now, we've got the balance, and this is what we've not had, in the last couple of seasons. We've got a good balance of experienced guys, the spine, Schmeichel, Carter Vickers, McGregor and Kyogo, and then surrounded by that, you've got your Engels at 21, Bernardo kind of early 20s as well, Kühn in that kind of mid-20s bracket. It's the right good mix of players that are still developing and growing, surrounded by your experienced pros that have been there and seen it and won us titles. And that's why I think we're all so excited about what this team can achieve. You mentioned earlier that Rodgers in his first season, he peaked in season 1, didn't he? And it gradually got worse. Season 2, we won the league at a canter, but it wasn't as, the football wasn't as good. Season 3, it was just right from the off, just seemed like a negative vibe. Whereas this time, we peaked towards the end of last season, but now we've gone up another level, and you just think that we can get better and better, and I think that's the exciting thing.
No, it is. It's very exciting. And again, we've all been in scenarios, I seen, be that at work or on social events where you're talking to somebody, but they're always looking over your shoulder for the next, more influential person to talk to. We've seen it. You can get that vibe. I always had that vibe with Brendan first time round. It was almost like he's looking over Celtic's shoulder. What's next in the line? I don't think that's there this time. I think there's a legacy that he realises he could well have had, and it was tarnished. It was tarnished when he left. Kevin Graham used to talk about statues outside Celtic Park and all the rest of it, and we'd got the mould and it was never made and everything. Invincible trebles. He normalised the winning of trebles. I've said this before. That was Brendan Rodgers in the modern age. He's come back. It's unfinished business for him, it feels.
I agree. I don't have that same concern, but I think it's twofold. You look, he's been back this summer. We've broken our transfer record. We then spent 9 million on Ida. If he's backed, he'll see that he can do something really exciting with Celtic. I think it's when he feels that the club don't match his ambition, that's when his head got turned. I'm not defending what happened last time at all. I was one of the biggest critics, and and how it happened and how it came about. But over the years, as we've all spoke about, that if the club match the ambition of players and managers, they're more than likely going to want to be a part of it for a longer period. And it's when we don't, then you can't sometimes blame them. So I think things seem a bit different this time. Let's hope it continues. Let's hope the likes of Arne Engels and the immediate impact that he's had, and what I honestly like. I genuinely think that guy can. I know it's very early days, but he's got it all. I'm watching him and I'm thinking there's nothing this guy can't do. He's got a bit of everything in him, and he'll be our next big player. And it just shows you, hopefully, I think Chris mentioned it last week on the aftermatch of the game. You get what you pay for, and hopefully that's going to be our new model. You can buy players at this price range and still sell them on in a few years, but get immediate impact from them where they come in and they straight away make your team better. Because you're looking at a player like him, and look, Matt O'Reilly was brilliant for us, and I'm not saying this lightly, but in terms of the attributes of what Arne Engels could become, just because of that pure physicality and athleticism that he's got, if he adds the goals and assists and things like that, he's got the potential to be every bit as good, if not better. I think the ceiling for Arne Engels could be even higher.
Well, it was Ryan Pearce actually that was speaking about it last week, and I think he put it really well. He spoke about the fact that the price we may get for Matt O'Reilly could rise to 30 million quid. What did we buy him for? 1.5, right? And so we were talking about profits in terms of 20 times the amount we paid for him we could eventually get. But then looking at bringing in a player like Arne Engels for 11 rising to 13, selling him for 45 million, it's like, okay, the profit is still there. You're never going to get 20 times when you're buying a player for 10 or 11 million quid. One thing about Arne Engels, and it wouldn't surprise me, and I'm not talking about him leaving us or what level he's going to play at. He's the type of player we'll all tune into a top international tournament and he'll star in it. He will star at a World Cup or a Championships, and we'll be looking at it going, you know what I mean? Brendan saw something in this guy.
Aye.
And what was the first thing he did? He drew a foul. And now I'm trying to figure out how do you hone that skill? Is it just a timing thing? I don't know, but he's brilliant at it.
Yeah, he uses his body weight, uses his positioning very well. Stan Petrov was really good at that back in the days. That was something he was good. He used his kind of backside well to draw in fouls. John McGinn does it. Obviously, Aaron Engels a bit taller and leaner, but he's he's good at that as well. He just plays with an urgency, with a maturity. Really enjoyable to watch. I mentioned to my dad, it's like the kind of guys that you used to see turn up for like Salzburg or Borussia Mönchengladbach, and you'd be like, what a player! If only we had someone like that. So, yeah, early days, but I think we're all very excited to see what he can do. I said yesterday, for me, on current form, and a lot of people disagreed, or not disagreed, but people have got their own opinions. But I just think right now Bernardo's looking good as well.
Yes.
For me, that's our strongest three at the moment. Rio brings something different and a bit of creativity, obviously, and can that bit of magic. We all seen that midweek. But if he just needs to maybe pick up a bit more consistency in terms of game to game, a real good run of it, and hopefully that'll come with this added competition now. And I think midfield's our strongest area. But then you've seen, I said it at the start of the season, even after the transfer window closed, the one area I feel like we're still a wee bit light is the winger area. And I think, again, you've seen that yesterday. Yang came in and did well, but for me, Lewis Palma is not going to be a big contributor.
It takes us to that subject, doesn't it? Just before I talk about it, I'm going to bring in something here because I don't want folk thinking it's all about the glitz and the glamour and the ego and all that kind of stuff for award ceremonies. I'll tell you something, right? I got an email and I'm going to read it out, but I won't reveal the name of the individual, and hopefully they're listening right now. I got an email. Anybody can email us, by the way. It's pauljohndykes@gmail.com. And I thought I would drop you a line to say thank you. On the 7th of May, my beautiful wife of 40 years, Karen, passed away in tragic circumstances. As you can imagine, this past a couple of months have not been very good. Sleeping at what could be called normal hours isn't there yet. So in the wee small hours, when I'm feeling low, I listen to Acsom. You and your fellow presenters have been a great help, talking all things Celtic. You take my mind off things for a while. If you could pass on my sincere thanks to everyone concerned and tell them that without Acsom, it would be a bit harder. Now, that's like winning an award. See, when that drops in your inbox and you read that. Now, I've met this individual since that email came in. We met, we spent a bit of time together, and lovely gentleman. Hopefully he's still tuning in. But that's the kind of thing, Asim, that, you know what? It kind of washes away all that negativity. Social media is a difficult place to navigate, right? And no matter what you do, good, bad, or indifferent, people are going to have a negative opinion on it. I don't take it personally, right? I really don't. But when you get the positivity like that, it completely eradicates and airbrushes all that nonsense out the equation, because that's more important, isn't it?
That message is what it's all about. That's it. We sometimes just take it for granted. We jump on here, we talk about Celtic. It's our passion, it's our hobby. We don't think anything of ourselves. We're just doing what everyone else does, except it's on a camera. But see, when you hear messages like that, and it's not the first. We've all kind of shared it before about different messages we've got. We don't know what people are going through. We don't know what their situations are. For them, just the normality, the routine of having something to listen into every day, watching like-minded Celtic fans talk about Celtic, that helps them through their day. Mm-hmm. And just hearing messages like that, I've received one before. I think I shared it with yourselves in the group chat, just about someone who was also struggling with a number of things in his life, and said the exact same thing. And that's when it really hits home that all this, like you say, the abuse, trolls, we'll take all that just for a message like that, because that's what it is.
100%, mate. Good words. Thank you very much. Let's talk then about that issue. And I think that when we go into January, and by the way, we're saying it, and Brendan Rodgers will be very, miles ahead of us in this assertion. I think that is the area that we're going to be looking at to strengthen in January. Listen, if we can bring players in January because we know that we can use them in the knockout rounds, that will be great. That'll be tremendous if we progress to that stage. But regardless of that, I do think that's the one area. And two of the guys you've mentioned there are definitely backups, because I think when I gave my strongest 11 at the beginning of the season, on the left was Maeda and on the right was Kühn. Bit of a, wild card, but on the right was Kühn. And underneath that, I thought Jamesy Forrest would be his backup. And then on the left-hand side, it was a wee bit more difficult because, and I'm not saying they are side by side, because actually, if you look at all the data, Palmer's done more than Yang, right? But Palmer's not got started this season. And I know that there was fleeting moments during the pre-season. And I don't know if I don't think it's anything to do with technical ability. I really don't, because I think he does have the technical ability. all I seen at the weekend, and it was frustrating. It was frustrating me because, so many times he got the ball and he checked back. It's almost as if he didn't have the confidence to take on a player, right? Now, Kühn's past the player before he thinks. It's just almost a natural instinct at the moment, right? But the one thing that really was the final straw for me, and I thought to myself, take him off. Where we're 2-1 down, and he starts this wee movement where he's backheeling the ball back and forward to Valle.
Right.
We eventually lost the ball. And it was so frustrating to watch because at that point, all you want to do is make progress, make a forward pass, a positive pass, create a chance, hopefully get a shot and goal, win a free kick, win a corner, something positive. And all I saw was showboating. And at that point, I thought to myself, get him off. Get him off because we need to win this game. And he's not going to win us the game.
No.
And what's happened to him, Acsom? Because for me, last season, at this stage of last season, he's putting in the figures. He's assisting. He's scoring.
His figures were good. He had a wee kind of purple spell where he was doing all right. I don't want to be too harsh on him, but for me, he's not a Rodgers player. He's not a Rodgers type of player. You look at what Rodgers is trying to do with this team, on and off the ball. He doesn't have those attributes. He's not explosive on it like the other wingers. Even Yang is more of a Rodgers type of player than Palma. Palma gets it and likes to slow down, akin to what Haksabanovic used to do.
Yeah,
Didn't work out either for him. And he's not, like you say, he's not producing the end product enough to justify his kind of lack of pace. Or, I thought he worked hard off the ball yesterday in terms of when he lost it, he came back, slide tackles, try to get the ball back. I don't think there's an attitude issue there now. I think he's just not a Rodgers type of player. As I say, on the ball and then even off it, I just feel like he's not got the intensity. That's not his game. Whereas you look at the others, they all kind of, if they lose it, they're quickly hunting in packs. I don't think that's his game. I don't think he's going to be the kind of guy that's going to contribute and make a big difference. If we're chasing a game, would you be really hopeful about Palma coming on to make that difference? I don't feel it. Yesterday I thought Yang came on and made a difference.
Yeah.
Now, we've all got our doubts about Yang as well, but coming in, Yang's showed wee glimpses like that. He needs to do it more consistently. His numbers obviously are nowhere near as good, but you just feel like he can take a guy on, or he can cause a bit of trickery. Palma just for me doesn't have that in his locker now. He's technically good, but he's not got the pace or the urgency or the tempo to really fit into the way we're wanting to play right now. And I think yesterday I was surprised to see him come out again in the second half. He was given another 10-15 minutes. Didn't really impact the game again. I'll be surprised to see much more of him in the months coming forward, unless we've got injuries. And that's why I'm a bit concerned about that area, because I think you take Maeda and Kühn out, and the drop off is pretty stark. James Forrest, I think, obviously, we've all seen how improved he's been again recently. But I think if you're taking both of the initial first team wingers out, you can see that there's a drop off. I think Forrest can come in and cover every now and again, but I think that's an area we have to sign.
We do, and that's not being negative, by the way. You're looking at Engels, right? Let's use Engels as and Kühn and Ida. These guys were signed by Brendan Rodgers. There's no doubt about it. And when you're looking at what we had in the past, so Ida, what did we have in the past? We had Now, did a bit, scored a few goals. Was he going to be that guy, that game changer? I'm not so sure. Like going into a Champions League game this season, and I said that I really want to see Ida at this level. I want to see if he can cut it.
Yeah. I
had confidence that he could cut it. Whether or not he would is another matter, and it looks as though he will be able to. He's already off the mark. Could O do that? No, sure.
No.
And then you're looking at the midfielders, and I used the example of the guys we brought in last year. Home, Kqədn, nowhere near it. Nowhere near being game changers in the Champions League. You bring in Engels and you think, right, that's different, completely different gravy. And it's the same with the wingers. And you think to yourself, right, we've got Kühn, right? Absolutely. Forrest, he'll come in for camos and he'll play 20, 30 minutes here and there, and he'll be good for that. On the left, you're right, the drop is vast, it's stark. What point do you think it gets to where Rodgers just says, you know what, I sent you on last year against Aberdeen in the semi-final, you almost lost us the game. We've gone out there yesterday and you've not really affected the game positively. At what point does Rodgers say, I've kind of had it with you now?
I think Yang's moved ahead of him now. I think that was his chance yesterday, and that's why look, all's well that ends well yesterday, and that's why I don't think it was a bad exercise in what we did yesterday, because it's given everyone a taste of it. Am I right in saying now everyone's featured at some point in this season? You know, in terms of that kind of small, tighter knit squad that we've got, other than maybe Home, or his Home came on in one of the games. I think he might have.
Home
And
came on,
Sinisalo,
he did come on, aye. The goalies, I think it's
the
just the
goalie
goalies really.
Sinisalo, but otherwise everyone, even Nawrocki came on yesterday, and I thought that was good to see, because I've been watching the kind of training clips and all that kind of stuff as well, and it just feels like a nice tight knit squad now. There's not a lot of players that are not contributing, so everyone's getting a chance. But I think yesterday was Palma's chance, didn't take it. Yang came on and looked lively, so I think now you've got Kühn and Maeda, and your backups are Yang and Forrest, because Forrest can play either side. So I think Palmer's now dropped down to fifth choice after yesterday, and I think our go-to winger to come on now, if we are changing, that might be Yang. We'll see going forward, but you're right. I think I like the squad now. I like the balance. I've said it. The midfield looks strong. Ida, I thought that was really important for him yesterday. You know, just to get. I know he scored midweek, but yesterday was a game-changing contribution. His touch for that second goal and finish, brilliant. You know, his all-round game hasn't been brilliant since he's came back, but I think gradually, with confidence, with match sharpness, that'll come. So that's him off the mark with 3 goals in 2 games now. So that's looking good as well. So let's just hope we can get by without too many more injuries. But there's a nucleus of about 14, 15 players that I feel we can rely on. And then again, I don't want to be too harsh, but Welsh, I feel like I've seen it too many times now. You look at the Livingston Cup game last season. You look at the last game of the season against St Mirren, the 2 each, or 3-2, sorry. He's too lacklustre at times for me. So again, it's another one that I wonder if he's now going to slightly drop off the pecking order when it comes to the backup centre-back positions.
I was watching this yesterday. Now, there's nothing better than seeing a player coming through the ranks, I honestly. And, it's strange that, because when you look at the way Mikey Johnston's career went at Celtic, and there's been others, that they're scared to do something in case they get the flack for it. It's human nature. But yeah, you've got to be a very strong individual to play for Celtic. It's as simple as that. And I think when you look at Stephen Welsh, I was looking at him yesterday thinking to myself, when was the last time you came away and thought, thank God we had Welsh today? Yeah. Because that was an onslaught, but Welsh was a rock. I don't think it's ever happened. And I asked the question after the game yesterday to Kevin and Sean, what moment do you remember is Stephen Welsh? Because, he's been in the first team squad now for 6 seasons.
Yeah.
And it was just that opening goal against Aberdeen, when Ange was in charge. And you think to yourself, right, you've got to have done more at this stage. He's played alongside some really, really decent centre-halves. And to be fair, when he's playing alongside CCVs, he's fairly anonymous. But I think that's because of the quality of the defender he's playing alongside. But when he's the man, Trusty's coming in. Trusty's the guy we know, experience playing for Celtic. Welsh needs to step up. I've not seen it. And there's a bit of his play that I'm not going to say annoys me, but I don't think it fits. You were talking about Palma maybe just doesn't fit the way that Brennan wants his wingers to play. Welsh takes too long on the ball. He does this thing where he draws his foot over the ball. You've seen it 100 times. The ball comes to him.
Was it him that Ange was raging at a couple of years ago in the Wraith Rovers game? I think it was, about moving it quicker. And even yesterday, some of his passes, it's slow, so the guy has to wait for it, and it almost causes injury potential for the next guy. You're right. I think he kind of falls under the Mikey Johnston category, where he's been seen for so many years now under different managers, and he's never really been able to make the grade and become a first teamer. He seems again like a nice guy to have around, a good squad player. I know he's obviously Scottish, so fits the quota, but he's one of those players you sometimes, even just for the player himself, it might be better just to move on and get game time elsewhere. With Ralston it's different. I think Ralston for me is still an able deputy at right back for now. I think obviously again that'll probably be something that we might address in the summer. But with Welsh, I don't know. I worry when I see Welsh in the lineup sometimes, especially if it's not alongside CCV. And again, yesterday didn't ease my fears in any sense there.
I always think about it in this way, right? So you're going into a big game, and generally speaking, the example I would use is a game against Rangers. Let's use Borussia Dortmund away. You're going into that fixture, Acsom, and you've got to ask yourself, are you confident if Stephen Welsh is starting that game? And you could ask yourself the same question about Palma. Now, this isn't about saying, get rid of them and being negative. This is just, right, do we want to progress as a football club? Because the situation could well be going into that game that Cameron Carter-Vickers has got the moon boot on and he can't play. Right. Are you confident with Stephen Welsh being in that position? And that's it. And I think that answers your question, doesn't it? And it's the same on the wing with Palma.
Yeah. Is there any further on the CCV injury? Because I really hope that isn't the case. Because we missed him for quite a few games last season in the Champions League, and you'd really want our first choice back four available. On yesterday, what did you make of Trusty? I thought, again, it's too harsh to kind of judge him too soon on that in a makeshift back line, and that's his first bit of action in a few weeks. So, it does take time sometimes. I thought he looked okay. Also kind of maybe a bit ponderous on the ball at times, but I'm not going to kind of make my judgments too early on him. But I do. It did yesterday made you appreciate the form of Taylor and Scales, particularly in the last few weeks since these signings have came in, because we can't rewrite everything and pretend that they've not had poor games or they've been ropey times for them. But I think they've really upped it again since the signings have came in, to the point where right now the position seems theirs until the others can maybe come in and prove otherwise. But yeah, I think we'll be able to judge Trusty more when we see him in a more settled back line.
I think a great point was made to me by a pal of mine, Hugh. A big shout out to you. You might be watching that. The makeup of that left-hand side just was weak. So you've got Vi making his debut, Trusty making his first start. You've got Palma on the left-hand side, who doesn't, like you say, doesn't do what Maeda does. And I think it might have affected the performance somewhat of Hatate. And it probably affected the performance of Trusty. So, you know what? You're probably looking at one of them coming into your starting 11, one of the guys that we mentioned, and then you can judge them. Valle coming in and being the only change in a team, and then thinking, right, okay, you've got your strongest centre half beside you, you've got your strongest left winger in front of you. How do you perform now? And it's a wee bit like that with Trusty as well. Because I was thinking, but we've thrown in a £6 million centre half here against Falkirk. It should be enough, but we know it doesn't always work like that. Tony Cassidy, brilliant email. That's what it's all about. Tony, that kind of thing is what it's all about. It's so positive to read that kind of stuff, and it makes everything worthwhile. Brown Warrior, unsociable media would be more apt. Well, anybody who ever gets drawn into it, the only advice I would give Acsom is, you know what to do, right? Go and put your phone somewhere in a drawer on your bedside cabinet in a different room. Leave it. Just leave it, right? Because it draws you in like a fishing rod. And by the time you go back on it, it's kind of subsided because you've not been throwing grenades back, and then you can move on. That's the advice I would give. Spell the glove. Palma hasn't done anything since the weather got bad last December. That's my excuse for not making it. See, if it wasn't for the weather, by the way, honestly, I just couldn't play.
In the knees.
That and the knee, and the dodgy elbow, all that stuff. And Gabriella Welsh, any relation to Stephen? Negative people are no worth talking about. Acsom is a sanctuary for lots of people, including me. So thank you all, and thank you for tuning in and sharing that with us, Gabriella. It's always an absolute pleasure. 1,000 strong on the old live stream today. I've got to give a big shout out to the Celtic FC women. They've done so well. They're on that cusp of getting out of the qualifying rounds. Of course, both of the second round games will be played at home, and we are up against Vorikla Portava. We're 1-0 up from the first leg. Murphy Agnew scores the goal. Eleanor Sadiku, what a job she has done, by the way. Because I know Fran Alonso was something of a favourite. He had the charismatic approach. And he was, the kind of guy that he had a personality that people gravitated to. Eleanor came in and won the league. She's now possibly going to get us into the groups for the first time ever. What a job they're doing. Brilliant.
Yeah, I remember when Fran left, there was a lot of kind of concern at that point because a lot of the big players had gone as well, and everyone was a bit worried that we weren't really focusing and doing enough to try and keep these players, and that's why Fran probably took the opportunity to go elsewhere as well. But yeah, to win the league and then now to be the first time ever making the group stages. This is a final qualifier, am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I put themselves in a great position, and hopefully they can do it. And it's just adds to the kind of all-round good feeling right now around the club.
Watch this space. We may well have someone from the team on This Is Acsom coming up. Watch this space. Thank you to everybody who supports what we do. Ronnie Glavin, big shout out to you. Thank you very much for that support also. And if you want to support us a wee bit further, there is a link underneath. We are up for 2 different awards at the National Awards, the FCAs. The link is underneath the video. That was a quick hour. Nice and positive on a Monday afternoon. Absolutely brilliant, Asim. Thanks everybody for getting involved. Join us again tomorrow at 12:30 for a Celtic State of Mind.